5, 6, 7, 8.
Hey EXers, welcome to the EX Podcast, episode number 42. This is your host, Stefan Vincent. I've started this podcast because I believe that companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talent. The podcast brings a different lens to the employee experience, a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Our guests, all thought leaders and disruptors in the EX space in their own way, come to this show to debate, discuss, and share best practices on the key components that foster employee engagement and strengthen company culture, and also to spark the conversation on how to create positive employee experiences. One size doesn't fit all. What Airbnb or Google do around the employee experience may simply not be applicable in a smaller company. This is what this show is all about, sharing stories of companies of all sizes, not only to show that EX doesn't require a large budget or large team, but also that there isn't one recipe. Each company can find its own way through the EX journey. Today's guest is Randy Stocklin, co-founder and CEO of the e-tailer One Click Ventures. Randy and his wife Angie have successfully built a nationally celebrated winning culture where they put people first. Today with Randy, we will talk about how it's important to focus on culture from the start, even when you have to juggle with conflicting priorities. What are some of the lessons that he learns the hard way? How he's implemented metrics and KPIs to measure the impact of EX on the overall business's performance, and what type of environment he's created where employees can thrive. This episode is brought to you by Fusion Alliance. Fusion Alliance delivers holistic solutions fusing together data, digital and technology to redefine customer experiences and move your ideas to execution. That's why businesses across multiple industries have relied on Fusion's expertise and partnership for over 25 years. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Randy. If you get a chance, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or YouTube. And last thing, if you want to send me feedback, suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at @EX_summit. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the EX Podcast. Super excited for today's guest, Randy Stocklin. Randy is calling from Indianapolis, and he is the co-founder and CEO of the e-tailer One Click Ventures. Randy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Stefan, thank you very much for having me.
To kick it off, tell us a bit more about who you are and what is One Click's business.
I started my career working for a company called Wi-Fi that developed internet banking software. So I was in a couple of different roles there around software engineering, and then I moved on to Angie's List, where I spent a little over 3 years as a software engineer. I was one of the earlier team members there. I think I was in team member number 40. And then from there, I went to a company called Primo that developed internet banking software, the Primo that developed marketing automation software. And then it was when I was at Primo when my wife Angie and I started One Click. And One Click today owns and operates 3 direct-to-consumer eyewear brands. So we sell value reading glasses through readers.com. We sell value sunglasses through Sunglass Warehouse. And we sell prescription glasses starting at $119 through the Felix and Iris brand.
Okay, so when you founded One Click, you had a very clear mission and purpose in mind, which was very customer-centric and empathetic with the experience of buying eyeglasses. Right, so this mindset and approach permeates how you've built the culture as well, I would say. Can you walk us through some of the process of what you learned and designing the business that you wanted to build with that customer-centric approach, and how you've applied this mindset to building the culture within your organization?
Yeah, our mission is to become, our mission at OneClick is to become the world's most people-focused eyewear company. And we think about that in three ways. One, our team members, our customers, and our community. And my wife and I, Angie, co-founded the business together, and from the very beginning, we were very intentional about those points, especially early on. There wasn't as much to give back in terms of the community, but the customers and our team members, we were really intentional about how we wanted to treat people. And I can think back to some of those early days. We started the business out of our home office, so we were both employed full time outside of OneClick, and nights and weekends we were answering emails and returning voicemails. The very early days, we had voicemail set up, and we were on our lunch breaks, or we were getting home at night, or before we go to the office in the morning. At our full time jobs, we would be responding to customer voicemails. And it was just always really important to take phenomenal care of our customers. And that's just been ingrained in our DNA from the very beginning. And we're fanatical about measuring our customer happiness. We measure NPS, Net Promoter Score. That's something that we've measured for years. Customer satisfaction score, CSAT, through all of our different communication channels, from email to calls to live chat. We want to make it easy for our customers to get a hold of us. All of our customer happiness team is located here in Greenwood. We don't have remote team members that are responding to customers. We don't outsource any of our customer service. So if someone calls, they're going to get someone in Greenwood, Indiana. And our average hold time, and this is average, is around 30 seconds. So you can get to someone right away. We don't believe in these like sophisticated call trees. We want to just make it really easy for our customers to talk to someone on our team that are product experts and are in the office here in Greenwood.
So it's always a challenge in the early years of a startup to juggle with conflicting priorities, between product developments, sales, funding, the culture. So you said that it was very early in the process where you and Angie wanted to really focus and create a very specific, unique culture at OneClick. What was the process to go through that? Did you, because started, obviously you grew as you hired a bit more employees here and there. So what was the process? Was it more organic? At one point, did you start feeling the needs to better define what the culture was and what the experience would be for your employees?
Yeah, great question, Stefan. So you're right. It's very difficult to manage all these different competing priorities when you're getting the business launched and starting to scale the business. Angie and I started before we hired anyone. We said, hey, what type of people do we want to work with? What type of environment do we want to create? And for us, that was pretty simple. It's like what would make us most happy? If we're envisioning a future where we go into the office every day with 20, 30, 50, 500 people, what do we want that experience to be? And that's what we set out to build. And I would say once we were outside of one or two rooms of people on the team, so that the 15 to 20 team member mark is when we started becoming very intentional about creating core values and making sure that we were communicating things consistently. So wanted to make sure that people from the hiring process to onboarding to just being part of the team day in and day out. All of the leaders were consistent in terms of how we were messaging values, our mission, and just really consistent in terms of how we were treating the team member experience.
How many people do you have in your organization working for you now?
We have around 80 folks on the team.
And who owns the employee experience in the organization?
It's a shared ownership. One of the things that I share with all of our team members during our onboarding process, and many folks that I talk with during I meet with almost all. It doesn't always work out this way, but I meet with almost all of our finalists for any role at OneClick. Unless I just have a really challenging schedule conflict, I like to meet with all of our finalists, and I understand that may not always be the case, but I like to make that happen. And so when I meet with those folks, I share that every single person at OneClick owns our culture. So it's not me, it's not Angie, it's not other leaders in the company. Every single person owns our culture. So I really place an emphasis on that shared ownership and how important that is. Now, I understand that as CEO that I'm ultimately responsible for everything that happens at OneClick, but I really try to emphasize to the team just how important the shared ownership of culture really is to getting the right people on the team, making sure that once we get the right people on the team, they're in the right seat, and that they have all of the support and tools necessary to not only pursue their professional goals and dreams, but also help OneClick pursue our goals and dreams as a company as well.
So what lessons did you learn the hard way and that you would like to share with our listeners so that they don't repeat the same mistakes? And what are some of the tips that you would like to share with our audience when it comes to shaping a culture?
How much time do I have?
To answer this question?
This one is a big can of worms because we've made so many mistakes over the years that I could spend the rest of the afternoon talking about this particular.
Well, let's start with maybe three things that you would like to share. The three biggest mistakes.
As soon as you possibly can. I mentioned earlier that we waited until the team was 15 or 20 folks. If we could go back and do that over again, we would have a clearly established mission and values and at least somewhat of a consistent team member experience on day one. I think that would have helped with some early conversations and early hires. So that's one piece of advice. Another lesson that we've learned the hard way is do not shortcut your hiring process. Mm-hmm. We attempted to do that we were going through a period of ramping up our marketing team in 2014, and we moved too fast on some hires because we felt like we needed people here right away to hit certain business goals, and there was certainly some truth to that in terms of the pace, but in hindsight, we could have still hit our business goals and targets without accelerating the pace on the hiring process. And it led to us getting some people on the team that weren't aligned with our values and weren't a great fit for OneClick. So that was one of the most important lessons I've ever learned as a leader. You just cannot take shortcuts during the hiring process, and you have to be really stubborn about the fit of each person on the team, because one person can, if they're not aligned with your values and aligned culturally, can have such a detrimental impact on the entire organization.
Yeah, especially when the organization is still small and it's infancy, where one negative one negative personality, for instance, has a huge impact on the entire organization.
Correct.
Any other tip?
I would say that another piece of advice that I would have for folks that are thinking about starting a company or in the early stages of defining their culture is build an incredible support system externally, whether that's through your board or your advisors or just peers and mentors that you have. That has been a huge key to our success at OneClick. We've been blessed to have so many amazing people externally support us in a variety of ways, and part of that is just the giving nature of the Indianapolis business community. People here are just so willing to give their time, whether it's a text exchange or a quick call or an email exchange, and to help each other. And I've had companies we've shared resumes with, and just by being intentional about building out that support system, it can pay off in such a big way long term. And if you don't get anything out of it, just the opportunity for you to give back. I've gotten a lot of personal when I'm able to weigh in on a business challenge or a particular topic with one of my peers. Doesn't happen often because I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with people that are a whole lot smarter than I am, but it just feels good to be able to give back when you can.
It's interesting because in the tech industry in general, and not just Indianapolis, but at least maybe mostly in the Midwest. I don't know how it is on the West Coast, for instance, but obviously there's a lot of competition between tech companies and startups to hire the brightest talents. But there's also a sense of cohesiveness, maybe, and companies willing to be able to help out each other to grow together. Right? Is it something that you see as well?
I do. I've seen it with resume sharing in the Indianapolis tech community. I've seen it with referrals. People are generous now. People also are competitive, and they have to do what's best for their company. And I feel like people do a good job of balancing those two things. But generally speaking, people are very generous in the tech space here, and I've benefited from that personally, and OneClick has benefited from that in a big way over the years.
So, what are the things that you do at OneClick to bring to life the company culture, the employee experience on a regular basis? Do you guys have specific events or specific initiatives that you do on a weekly basis, on a daily basis maybe, to engage employees and to connect them to your core values?
We certainly do, and we have a number of things that we do with regards to team member recognition. But I'll start with what I think is most important when it comes to team member experience. It's making sure that alignment around values is there, and once that's there, it's really this partnership where you're helping. Our job as my job as a leader is helping the people I work with directly achieve more than they ever thought was possible, and really help them fully understand what they're driving toward personally and professionally, and playing a role in helping them, a support role in helping them get there. And then if there's good alignment with what they're hoping to accomplish with the business's objectives and goals, then that partnership just works extremely well. And that's why the alignment piece is so critical, and we work so hard to make sure that during the hiring process that alignment is really tight. And then once you have that's really the foundation of everything we do. And then we have professional development programs that that help people accelerate their growth. We have a formal program that does that on a quarterly and annual basis. We have a monthly core value award for team member recognition. We have a monthly above and beyond award, and both of those awards are peer nominated. So you're nominating others on the team that you think are deserving of those two awards. We have annual awards that are also core value and above and beyond related. We have a lame duck award. It's a stuffed duck. You may have seen this on our social profiles, but it's to encourage failure. And so we take nominations throughout the month, and then at our monthly all hands, we pass the duck around, and the individual who had the biggest failure that month gets to keep the duck for the next month. So we do a number of things like that, and those recognition moments are really valued by the team members, and we're really intentional on our cadence and how the nomination process is set up and all of those things that go along with those awards.
So talking about failure, speaking to other startup CEOs on this podcast, a common theme is the CEO's vulnerability, right? It's the ability to not being afraid to experience a few things, not being afraid of failing, so that you just test a few things, see what works, what doesn't work, make some adjustments until you find what really works for your company. Did you go through the same process as you were growing your business?
We do. We have an experimentation. I mean, experimentation is just ingrained in our DNA as a company. We've always been a company and a team that has experimented a lot. I mean, part of that is just in the industry that we're in, from whether it's a new process that we're experimenting with, it's a new marketing channel we're experimenting with, it's a new piece of software that we're experimenting with. We have an experimentation budget that every team in the organization can tap into. There's a process that you have to go through. It's not a heavy lift at all, but there is a framework that we've had established in terms of how you present ideas and how those ideas are approved, and it's really lightweight, and it's intended to be lightweight because you want to encourage as many people in the company as possible to be experimenting and taking calculated risks to make their area of the business and the overall business better.
So one of the big challenges that companies are facing is, okay, so we have this awesome company culture, we have some employee experience initiatives that we're building inside the organization, but how do I tie this to the overall business's performance? Right? What impact does it have on the business outcomes? Do you have a way to measure this at one click?
We use a platform, a software platform called Tiny Pulse that measures, one of the things that it measures is team happiness. And we make it clear to our team that we want folks thinking about that in terms of their engagement, and we have an internal definition that we use for that that we share with folks during onboarding, just to make sure there's good alignment around what that means. So at least once a month, everyone on the team will get a survey that they can answer via Slack, they can answer via, they can click through to their email or the app that they have on their phone, and it's a simple question on a scale of 1 to 10. How happy are you at work? So there's on our executive agenda. There's a spot on the agenda every week. So we meet weekly as an executive team where we have a Tiny Pulse line item on our agenda, and we talk about the team happiness score. We talk about other feedback that we get through Tiny Pulse because there's a weekly question, and and these questions are asked on a variety of topics. So we've seen over time, we've seen a correlation between team happiness scores and business performance. And that is something that has been really fascinating to see over the years, because we've been using Tiny Pulse for, it's been about 4 years now. And so we've been able to see certain trends in business performance and results in Tiny Pulse and do some comparing and contrasting across various data points.
So as an online retailer, technology is at the core of your business, obviously. And so what type of role does technology play in building your employee experience and shaping your culture at OneClick? So you mentioned the survey poll app that you're using. Any other technology that you're leveraging to engage your employees and tie this employee experience together?
Tiny Pulse is the primary platform that we use. The weekly survey comes through Tiny Pulse, and during the survey process, this weekly survey process, folks can nominate their peers for these awards, for the awards that I mentioned earlier, the Above and Beyond Award, the Core Value Award. So as it relates to technology and team member experience, I would say that's the number one tool that we have at our disposal.
So you mentioned that you don't have any remote workers. Is it deliberate, or is it just the fact that you've been able to find the right talents inside Indianapolis?
I would say it's been a combination of those two things. We have been intentional about finding folks that are interested in coming into the office every day, and we've been able to find an incredible amount of talent in the central Indiana area, and we have folks that commute from all areas of town. So we're fortunate enough to be located right off I-65. So even though some people think of Greenwood as like northern Kentucky, it's just like a 15-minute drive from downtown. So it's pretty convenient being right off the interstate, and that hasn't presented any sort of major obstacles around recruiting.
You've got a pretty cool office space. So can you describe it to our listeners? And was there an intentional thought process behind building it?
So our team, some of our creative folks, this was dating back 5 years ago when we moved into this space. Our team partnered with a local interior designer, and we let some of our creative folks work with the interior designer, and that was a great partnership. And we wanted to be intentional about, just like we're intentional about our culture and the people we hire and the team member experience, we wanted to be really intentional about our physical environment. And that's so important because people spend a lot of their time here. And so we wanted it to be like a home away from home. We purchased a former bank operations center. So the building wasn't, the decor wasn't beautiful at the time we purchased it.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine that.
We ripped up the floor. We put down all new flooring, all new paint. We built a new cafe. We completely remodeled the cafe. We built a game room, put in artificial turf with some ping pong tables and foosball and pool table, and we added a gym in the back that folks can come in and work out. We already had showers in the building, so that worked out well. So I'm really proud of the space that we have. We'd like to do more in the future. It's still not as brand centric complementary, like our individual brands. We have meeting rooms themed around our brands, but I'd like to see us do more around our individual brands in the future. But I'm really proud of the space.
Good. So we're getting towards the end of the conversation here, and usually I like at this time in the discussion to ask some personal questions so that our listeners get to know our guest a bit more intimately. So if you were to invite someone famous to dinner, who would you pick and why?
I have always been interested in American history. So I would invite George Washington to dinner. I would be interested to pick his brain on leadership and all of the different things that were happening at the time of the revolution and being the leader of this new country. I would just find that conversation fascinating on so many levels that he would certainly be my choice for a dinner.
What was your dream job growing up as a kid?
I wanted to be an attorney.
Oh, okay, yeah, in different space. Why did you want to be an attorney?
Oh, I always thought it would be. I always thought, and at the time, I was thinking about it in terms of being like a prosecuting attorney, and that side of the fence always interested me. But as I started to get into my teenage years and move on to Franklin, as I moved on to Franklin College, the entrepreneurial bug really started to bit me and really started the whole notion of pursuing an entrepreneurial path really interested in me. I saw my dad had a rental business that he'd built over the years, and seeing that, having that perspective as a child and as a young adult really motivated me to do something on my own. So my thinking really started to change as a late teen and as I moved into college.
So what is your favorite vacation spot?
Angie and I try to take a couple of trips a year. Traveling is one of the few hobbies that we have. And favorite trip, I believe Angie would say the same, but our favorite trip was to Italy a few years back, and we from Rome to Venice and the Amalfi Coast, we just were able to consume amazing food. The scenery was beautiful, and then the history, especially in Rome, was a lot of fun for us to take in.
Well, let's talk about food then. What's your favorite food?
I don't know that I have a favorite food. So as I eat a lot of things with chicken in it.
Uh-huh.
And now my wife Angie is a vegetarian, so she's done a really good job of reducing my meat consumption. I'm not a vegetarian, but I certainly eat a lot more vegetables today than I did 5 or 10 years ago.
If you were the last man on earth, what would you do?
I have no idea how to answer that question. What would I do if I was the last person on earth? It's a great question, Stefan. I don't know that I have an elegant answer other than some of my other hobbies are, I guess, playing tennis, though. You need another person to play. So I'm trying to think of, I enjoy reading, playing tennis, traveling. And I just enjoy what I enjoy. I'm so passionate about our mission and our work at One Click. I'm so passionate about the awesome team that we have here, and just feel really blessed to be able to do what I do. This is what I love, and this is what consumes most of my life, because I love it so much.
Well, what is the way then for our listeners to follow you and One Click Ventures on social media?
So we have social profiles for One Click, and those are pretty easy to find. We also have social media profiles for each of our brands. So readers.com, Sunglass Warehouse, and Felix and Iris. And then me personally, I'm not very active on Twitter as a content producer, but you can find me at my Twitter handle is Randy Stocklin.
All right, and we make sure to share those in the notes on the website. Any last word of advice or wisdom?
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I guess the one thing that I would leave you with that has served us really well is whether it's hiring, whether it's evaluating new business opportunities, I think being very intentional and thoughtful and surrounding ourselves with incredible people has served Angie and I as founders really well.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for your time today and sharing some insights about One Click Ventures and how you approach company culture. Very interesting.
Well, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.